Everybody in. There we go. Got the recording going. Thank you all for joining me today on the BIM XT network. My name is Dana DeFilippi, coming to you from my home office in Virginia. For those of you who do not know me, I'm a co-leader of computation at Smith Group, an active participant in a few different BIM groups, such as BIM Thoughts podcast, and my very own YouTube channel, Dynamo BIM. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Today, we are trying something new. Hopefully, we all benefit from this and you guys all have some fun. The group and I have put together a mural. So real quickly, I'm actually going to throw up a poll here on who has used mural. Have you used mural before? Or what is mural? Right? Never heard mural before in my life. And that's okay, because we're going to go over it and hopefully have a lot of fun and hopefully come away from this thinking about how cool mural is and how you can't wait until next meeting. So end poll will share the results there. So it looks like about half of us have no idea what mural is. About a third of us have never used mural and a third of us have used mural. So that's completely fine. Like I said, hopefully it's a very intuitive environment. We'll all be able to pick it up very quickly. So you can see, I actually have a few moving mouses in my screen here, which is very, very cool. Hopefully you guys see within the chat, Allison has shared the link to the mural. So please feel free to join me and the group over there. You can join as a visitor, or if you have a mural account, for the third of you that are familiar, please feel free to join as yourself. As you may be able to see, the mural is broken up into two areas. The area on the left with the gray background goes through information about the group. One thing that you may be able to notice is if you double click on something like an image, it will take you to a link possibly. So the Twitter, the LinkedIn, my YouTube channel, all of those are links you can double click on. So interact with them in a different way, right? Way cooler than my PowerPoint. So this will, from now on, replace my PowerPoint. 5 different user groups across the East Coast have come together. You can see they're all listed here, right? DC, Baltimore, Revit, Richmond, Virginia. I'm wearing the Revit DC shirt today, personally. Revit Triangle and Revit Queen City. And that list is growing, so we may see a wider representation. Some of our advisors, you guys are really having fun here. That's awesome. Love seeing that. And seeing some of you guys pop in some notes and different things. Some of our different advisors here within the group. Once again, you can get to their information by double clicking on their LinkedIn and or Twitter page. And today, our presentation is on add-ins. Very, very thankful for having Ehsan Nejad for joining us today. He is truly my favorite person. Very, very inspirational to the industry as a whole. And today he's going to actually talk to us about pyRevit, his free Revit add-in. He has generously given this to the industry, and it has so many cool tools in it. So make sure you check it out. He's going to tell us all about it. If you don't have familiarity with that, you will after this. And then we have Jason Kunkel with CAD Micro. One thing I actually want to mention really quickly, backing up, sorry, Jason, Ehsan actually presented with the group in January on Rhino inside Revit with his colleague, Scott Davidson. You can get to that presentation through our LinkedIn page by double clicking on that icon. Just a little side note there. I'm going to close out of the outline. Jason Kunkel today is going to actually have a really cool presentation. I'm very excited about it, and that's something that I'm super familiar with. How an idea becomes an add-in. You guys may know CAD Micro Systems. They create quite a few Revit add-ins, maybe some that you're familiar with. And so how does that process happen from it getting on Jason's desk, right, to becoming an add-in? How does that process actually occur? So we're going to talk about that. Jason's going to talk about that. I'm really excited to learn about that. Now over on the right side, you guys are awesome. I see you're already starting to interact here. You can see this is completely for you guys, the BIMXT network participants. So most of the mural here is for you guys. One of the best things about BIMXT network is that we network, right? That's the coolest thing about us. Our chat is always super, super active. So we're kind of replacing our chat with this mural here. So you can see that we have a few different groups of information where you can share different things. We've actually replaced a few of our polls. So over here on the very far left, it looks like somebody's added a note over top of my notes. It's fine. It's fine, you guys. These are actually for reference. So you can see here that, you know, dark blue, different colors, etc., are associated to different groups. I associate with BIM and IT. Okay, so that has a little computer on it. You can see we've tried to put some icons thanks to the advisors and some other people within there that really helped with this. So down here on the bottom under presentation topics and even under questions, these guys can be copied. So because I'm BIM IT, right, I have a computer, I'm just going to copy that guy. So I'm going to select him, do a Control C, Control V, maybe it will let me just right click and duplicate it. There we go. That works better, right? We're all going to learn together. So right click on the note, duplicate it, and then I can move it around. You can see I personally love Mario. There's a bunch of different Mario characters here that basically allude to a bunch of different emotions, right? How are you feeling today? Let us know. Once again, we are going to give a prize, $25 Amazon gift card. I have a few things in my cart that I could buy with that, to a random participant today. So make sure that you're putting your name in there, right? How am I feeling today? I am ready to network. I think I already added it here. So I'm gonna add my note, right? Maybe I'll delete my original one, delete that guy. And then I'm just gonna add my name. Dana, I'm here to network, right? So please feel free to add your emotion, how you're feeling today. You can also see that we have some things. One of the things that we do within our survey, so this will also possibly replace the survey, which is why we don't have the survey link up in the very top left of the mural, is future topics. What is it that you want to see? Or maybe a presentation that you have that you'd like to present with the group. Successful project that you had, a cool add-in that you've created, whatever it might be, maybe an awesome Dynamo workflow. You'd definitely be a fan of mine if you came in here and presented on an awesome Dynamo workflow. Or one of my things, tired topics. So if I'm actually going to come over here, I'm going to duplicate, and not to hate on BIM 360, but I'm going to say I am so tired of hearing about it. I am tired of hearing about BIM 360. So I'm just going to come in here and put, not Dabna, Dana, under tired topics. I am so tired of hearing that, right? Maybe a future topic that I want to see is something on MEP, right? I know that we get a lot of people that want to see things with an MEP representation. That's cool. Then we also have an area for just general information to share. Maybe something cool that you stumbled across, whatever it might be. And then down at the bottom, some different polls. Have you ever created an add-in, right? Oh, and that actually broke here. Ever created an add-in? That works a little bit better. I'm gonna lock that so that doesn't move around. What's your favorite add-in? I probably should have given that guy a little bit more space, right? Doing this all on the fly. That's completely fine. And then maybe a Revit add-in that you would like to see. What's something that's missing? And what's your favorite pyRevit button? You can see I already added one here. The wipe tools. Hopefully Ehsan will talk about that. So as you guys plan here, I know that there's tons to do. I see a lot of you guys are having fun, which I am so excited about. Make sure you add yourself to that mural. I'm going to stop sharing and jump over to Ehsan. Ehsan, how are you doing today?
Oh, should have unmuted myself. Pretty good. Should I start sharing?
Please do. Please do. First off, where are you calling from today? I'm also going
Oregon.
to I know I said that I was going to stop doing this, but I'm going to throw in a poll to ask the group where they're calling from. So
okay.
yeah,
Right.
Portland, Oregon. I can't wait to travel, come visit you in Portland, Oregon.
I
The
know
upper
you
north,
should. Everybody should.
upper Northwest is so beautiful.
I've
Right?
always
Especially during
joked
this
about it.
time.
It's America's best kept secret.
Not anymore. Not once I
Not
get
anymore.
there. I'm bringing everybody. So you work at McNeel. You're working on
so
the
I
Revit
work at
inside
McNeel
Revit.
since about a year and a half ago, and I joined the team that develops Rhino inside Revit. One of the good things is that sort of like it kind of exposed me to a whole set of developing challenges and got me to get better at what I'm doing. So hopefully all of this will affect pyRevit as well soon. Yeah, but yeah, I'm on the McNeel team working on
Always
writing.
adding awesome things to Revit.
Hopefully, trying
You
to make it better.
you try and succeed, sir.
Okay, so going to share now. Share my screen. You should be able to see my
Sure do.
Revit screen, right?
Which also for the audience, if you double click on the little pyRevit icon, you'll be able to get to the pyRevit. Is it the GitHub?
I think it's the forums, the one that you have. But anyway, I'll show you the. So the Revit add-on that I've been working on for the past, I don't know, 6-7 years now, since 2014 that I started it, is called pyRevit. Many of you probably have heard of it. It is basically at its core, it's a rapid prototyping environment for Revit. So if you have an idea that you want to develop an add-on for, or like a script for Revit, that kind of stuff, it's kind of like pyRevit's the Revit's scripting environment. You can create Python scripts, C# scripts in different languages. You can even throw in your Dynamo definitions or Grasshopper or Rhino inside for Revit definitions, that kind of stuff inside pyRevit, and it would load it up inside your Revit toolbar like this. So if you notice that there's a pyRevit ribbon here that has a lot of tools in it, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more. But the sort of like the entry point for the project is www.pyrevitlabs.io. And when you go there, it'll take you to this Notion page that it's sort of like the wiki, as I call it, for pyRevit. It has a lot of resources to get you started. You have access to the full pyRevit source code. If you want to fork it, make changes to it, customize it for your own, it's all open that way. The pyRevit discussion forums that I highly suggest everybody that gets involved with pyRevit to kind of join the forums as well. It'll take you to a discourse sort of like framework that we have set up for pyRevit. It's a great place to ask questions, and a lot of people will be actually get to answer your question sooner than I can. So it's a great environment. So this page, this wiki thing can get you started using pyRevit and developing for pyRevit. That there are really two different aspects of pyRevit. You can download and install pyRevit and just use the tools and don't worry about developing scripts and all that kind of stuff. Or if you want to get better, like start developing add-ons and scripts and whatnot for Revit, you can actually start sort of like developing inside pyRevit, because it's a very easy environment that way. It can get you started with Python very easily, create a set of tools. Once you get better, once you have like ideas about the bigger tools that you want to create, then you can like create them as separate independent add-ons in C# or other languages. And it has a couple of links to kind of like staying updated with the products, dealing with the issues. If you have any issues, there are a couple of FAQs and how to report those issues back to us, that kind of stuff. And if you want to get involved, like supporting the pyRevit community. So this is pretty much all you want to know. If you want to develop for pyRevit, this couple of sort of like articles here that are creating your first command, developer docs, pyRevit command line interface, and pyRevit for teams. They're actually really good. Some of them are actually pretty big. Like the developer docs is mostly focused on developers and has a lot of YouTube videos on how you can start with Python for Revit and sort of like all the resources related to pyRevit. And you can, they sort of like the services and the mechanisms that are available to you to sort of like create your own scripts. So when you get pyRevit installed, I'm gonna minimize this to get it out of the way. When you get pyRevit installed, I forgot to tell you how to download pyRevit. So you go to the pyRevit source code from here, and it used to be more prominent at the top, but now the releases are on the side. sort of like listed on the side here. And you can see it, the latest release are always listed here. So if I click on that, it'll take me to the page for that release. And you can see what's changed in different aspects of pyRevit, like the tools, installer, telemetry system, API, that kind of stuff. If you only care about the tools, you probably want to read the tool section only. And you can see like some of the fixes that have been done to the tools and whatnot. And you have access to the .exe installer at the bottom of this page. So that's how you can download pyRevit, and it just installs like any other application in Windows. Make sure obviously to have Revit closed. It works, the same installation of pyRevit works across all the Revit versions from 2017 to 2022. So there's only one set of pyRevit that's installed, and then it attaches itself to all the existing installed Revits on your machine. Once you launch your Revit, you see that pyRevit will sort of like create this ribbon here and add its own default tools. To basically manage just the pyRevit itself, you can come to this pyRevit panel. That's the first panel in pyRevit tab. And you have an about window that gives you like the version and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to communicate it back to us and somebody asks you which version of pyRevit you're running, that's where to get it. And one of the most important, there are a couple of links to like good resources like API docs and sort of like wiki and all that kind of stuff that we talked about. But the settings window is also an important window to kind of take a look at. There are a couple of core settings that sort of like more advanced. You don't generally want to mess with those kind of stuff. Environment variables, don't worry about it much. Once you install pyRevit the first time, pyRevit always gives you this window, this report window when it starts up. It kind of tells you what's going on. That is on the reporting level. So if you don't want to see it, you can turn the reporting off and just pyRevit will load silently. And you can also, there's a whole bunch of other settings in here too. You can also attach and detach pyRevit to different Revit versions right from here. So if you have like 5 different Revit versions and you only want pyRevit on one of them, you can come in sort of like here and turn off the ones that you don't want. And UI UX section has a couple of tools for working with the UI. Like it's got this free colorizing tab colorizer that I also have active right here. You can see that tab in my Revit document has a top border, like a dark border around it. That's where you can customize those. And you can sort of like colorize the project tabs and family tabs separately and independently from each other. So a couple of like this, and then at the bottom of this, there's a place that you can add your own extensions to pyRevit, which is a whole different set of things that you can do when developing for pyRevit. So there's a lot of really good tools in here. I'm going to grab this and move it out of the window. There's a lot of good tools in here. I'm just going to go over some of the more sort of like popular ones, but basically you have a set of toggles in here that you can, like for example, the tab coloring thing that we talked about. Let me actually open another document so you can see how it's going to look like with a different document open. You can see that this document is using a different color, like the blue one and the dark one. And you can customize these colors the way you want to, and even the thickness of that, all that kind of stuff. So this toggle usually turns on and off or toggles the features that pyRevit provide to you. So you can turn things on and off that way in the UI. And like there's a minify Revit UI that if you have a lot of Revit add-ons installed, you start seeing a lot of tabs in there. And that's one of the tools that you can sort of like simplify the Revit UI. One of the things that I want to tell you about sort of like pyRevit in working with pyRevit in general is that there's a couple of tools that have a dark sort of dot at the end of their name. That means that they have options. Like you can configure these tools independently from pyRevit. And the way you get to it, it's described in the tooltip. So if you hold Shift and click on that tool, it'll take you to the options for that tool instead of actually doing what it does, right? So in terms of sort of like minifying, I can select which Revit tabs I want to hide when I'm minifying the Revit UI. So if I say I want to turn off pyRevit and pyRevit dev and I say hide selected, when I turn this off, these 2 tabs will go away in the UI, so I can simplify my UI to sort of like work with my projects more effectively. Just giving you examples of what these toggles are. All these pyRevit panels, they're basically Revit normal tool panels. So you can grab this, like if you want to grab the selection and move it outside of the Revit window and sort of like go about your projects, go about your tabs and all that kind of stuff. You can do the same. And then just like any other Revit, you can just grab it and throw it on the panel again, and it will go snap in its original spot. There are a couple of really good pick tools. So let me open a level here. Actually, let me open one of these standard Revit projects if I can. Have something in here. Let's just go. I don't know. Let's just go with this. Okay, so if I, for example, I want to select all the walls in this view only, or let's say you got a lot of doors or something like that, and you want to select those only. The pyRevit pick tools are actually super helpful. So if you click on the pick, it'll give you the options for like most popular categories, and you're like, well, I just want to select the walls. And when I do a box selection, it only selects those elements. It's a lot better than selecting everything and then going to the corner filter box in the corner of Revit and trying to filter stuff out. Again, it has a black dot in front of it, so you can shift click and customize the categories that you want to see on the favorite list. So if you're a structural engineer, you want to see a whole different set of categories, you can do that. And then it's got different variations for picking detail elements versus model elements. So if I have a lot of like detail lines over this, this is a 3D view. Let's go to something like this. Let's throw a couple of detail lines. If I say, hey, select all the detail elements, and I do this, it doesn't select anything else, only selects anything that is view dependent and considered to be detailed, like text.
Such a time saver, right?
Exactly.
Not having to
It actually helps a
isolate
lot.
elements and stuff.
Yeah, it actually helps a lot. Like I used to draw a lot of, for example, wall sections, and every once in a while the location of the wall changes, and you have to move all the graphics that you have on the wall sections. For those kind of stuff, it's actually pretty helpful. There is another very popular tool in the pyRevit called the pattern maker. I'm going to go to views and create a drafting view here, let's say, whatever that scale is. And I'm going to draw a tile. Maybe not make it too big, maybe like about 2 feet by 2 feet. So that would be 2 feet and then 2 feet. It doesn't have to be a square. It can be anything that you want it to be. And I'm going to draw a couple of circles here and maybe splines. And then anything else that you want to draw. And I'm going to select all of these. These are the core of my pattern. And I'm going to say pyRevit make pattern. Give it a name. And then I would make it a detail pattern, for example. I do want a field region created for this. And if you want to make changes to it, all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to, pyRevit will show you this orange sort of like notification bar at the top that instructs you to pick the corners on the opposite sides of this tile. So this corner and that corner, and it would generate a pattern for me. Now, if I use a field region, I want to create a box, I can go here and find the field region that pyRevit created for me and work with that pattern. And then this is a model pattern. So a lot of times, like for example, I don't have a lot of lines in here, but you can actually grab the lines and rotate the pattern and all that kind of stuff. So you can create all sorts of like detail and model custom patterns for your interior design jobs, all that kind of stuff, like exterior patterns, anything that you want to do. And it also, the same tool, that has a lot of notes in the tooltip, so take a look at it. The same tool can rescale existing patterns, can combine them together, or make changes to them. Like if you want to flip the pattern vertically, horizontally, rotate it, scale it, all that kind of stuff. So it doesn't only create patterns, it actually works with existing patterns to that you can sort of like use. And if you want to export this pattern to pad file, so your Autodesk friends can, AutoCAD friends can use it, you can do that as well. Just select the pattern and export it to a pad file. So that's a pretty powerful pyRevit tool. There's a sort of like a match.
Pretty powerful.
Style. What is it?
Is it pretty powerful?
Yeah.
That tool is hugely powerful.
Yeah.
Has anybody actually looked through a pattern file and tried to edit one of those?
Yeah,
it's
that's almost
madness.
Impossible.
It's madness.
Yeah.
And you figured out all of that madness and created an add-in. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, of course. I kind of figured like it's easy. A lot of Revit add-ons like sort of like allow you to create patterns, come up with their own interfaces to let you draw lines and all that kind of stuff. And I thought like we have an interface for drawing all sorts of lines and curves and whatnot. Why not just use this one instead of like having another one? So anyway, there's a lot of tools in here. There's a match tool for matching properties, kind of like the match property tool in AutoCAD. You can select different objects and whatnot, select the properties that you want. There's another one in here, match styling, match dimensions. There's a lot of like different matching, like match paint. If you have a paint on the wall and you just want to pick it up and apply it somewhere else, that kind of stuff. And each one of these tools have really good sort of like tool tips and videos and whatnot sometimes attached to them. So it depends on the tool, but there's a lot of instructions on the tool tips on how to actually use the tool. And then you have a lot of tools in pyRevit for working with sheets. Like for example, if I want to, let's say I get a list of sheets from my structure engineer, and it says I can go to batch sheet maker and I can say like M100, I want M100 to M110. All of these sheets are going to be named mechanical, I don't know, information or something like that, whatever. And I want to create the sheets. I can say create, and I can pick my title block, that's just frame only, and select. And it would generate 10 sheets for me right here. I think I threw it in here. See, from M100 to M110, and I just got those sheets and I can start working with them. So it's got a batch sheet maker that you can create a lot of different sheets, and you can add multiple lines in there. So you can have a sort of like a template for all these sheets that you want to add to your project, or the placeholders that you want to add, either of them. And all the usage information is actually described on the top of this. We can copy sheets to other documents. You can copy viewports between the sheets, move the viewport between the sheets if your viewport is a model viewport, because it can't really exist on more than one sheet, so you get to move it. So it's a lot of like sort of like tools to work with sheets. A lot of tools to work with revisions. You can add like set revision on sheet. I don't have, there's only one revision in this project. Let me add a couple more and say set revision on sheets. Then I can go and say like 2 and 3. I want to set it on, let's say these sheets. And it would set those revisions for you, and we will give you a report of that. Now, if I want to go and say, hey, I want to print those sheets for that revision, I can come here and say, create a revised sheet set for this revision. And it would find it all the right sheets that sort of like have that, and sort of like will notify you also that, hey, you got this sheet that doesn't have any model contents and seems to be a placeholder. So it's sort of like, it kind of like watches for you too, that says this sheet doesn't really have anything on it. But basically it creates that sheet set for you. Now, if you go to Revit Prints menu from the view sheet, you can see that there's a revision 2 here that has all those sheets already selected for you. And you can just go here, select that, hit print on your sort of like print configuration and be done with it. So a lot of tools for like finding all the revised sheets. If you select a cloud, you want to find the other revisions anywhere else, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of handy tools in here. There is a print sheet tool that's quite popular at the end of this. Well, if you open that, it will pull automatically all the project sheet indices in your project. There are a couple of standard ones too. So if you want to see all the sheets or just the unlisted ones, you can also do that. But architectural drawing index is my index sheet. I have come up with my own methods internal to sort of like sort those sheets, and pyRevit doesn't care about that. It just reads your schedule and sort of like goes based on the same order of the sheets that you have. And you can print these with a prefix index in front of them. It shows you the final file name like that. You can sort of like, it shows you all the sheet revisions on those sheets, all that kind of stuff. It has something that none of the Revit printers have, as far as I know, that you can go with a variable paper size. So it can print different sheets with a different print settings. So if you want like a couple of sheets in color, a couple of sheets in different size, all that kind of stuff, you can set all of these in here. And there's a guide attached to it. It actually stores that information on a property on your title block. If you create that property in your title blocks, all that kind of stuff. It also does, let's go back to something normal. It also, for the naming, has naming formats. So you can, if you're working with a, let's say, jurisdiction that has online submission and they sort of like require a very specific format, naming format for the PDFs, you can actually define that format using the existing parameters that you have. You can grab parameters from your title block, from the sheet, from the global parameters, anything that you want, and include them in the name, and just swap and say, hey, I want to use this. And it would change the naming patterns for all the PDF sheets, and you can just hit print and it would print out all the PDFs that you want. One of the things that I do all the time is that I create placeholders for mechanical information sheets and electrical sheets, all that kind of stuff, the consultant sheets. And I want to sort of like reserve so this option that says include non-printable sheets in indexing, I reserve the numbers for those sheets in my index. So when I print, those PDFs are empty, I can just grab them, place them in the same folder, combine all of those in one set if I want to. And you can combine all into one PDF if you want to from here as well in order. So it sort of like combines all the sheets into one PDF in order. It's a pretty powerful print sheet tool. It can also work with any other projects that you have open. So if you have other projects attached to this model, you can actually open that model right from here, print a couple of sheets from there, and be done with it without really dealing with like manually opening that model and printing sheets and whatnot. And then one of the most sort of like powerful tools in pyRevit that is sort of like newer is the Manage Keynotes tool. This Manage Keynotes tool, I don't have any keynotes attached to this one. Let's go on desktop, create a keynote file here. Let's call it keynotes. I'm going to use that, and sort of like pyRevit will open this, and I can say, give me a new category. Let's say the category key would be C1. And this is my, let's say, FF&E keynotes. And I'm in that category, so I can see all categories, that single category, and I can start adding keynotes and say like K1. And notice that it shows me all the used keynotes, the key unique keys here, so you don't have to duplicate stuff.
Is this single user?
No, it's actually multi-user. And
oh my gosh.
It does work with BIM 360 as well.
What?
So create keynotes, like this is going to be my first keynote. And there's a lot of like handy utilities in here that if you want to capitalize all this, that kind of stuff, you can do that. And then that's the keynote. I think I do have, so if I double click on this, I'll go, let's see, go to drafting. Let's go to one of the views that I do have. It's actually a model view. Working, let's go to this one. And I'm going to open my keynote manager and double click on this and place a keynote right here. And you can apply as many keynotes as you want right there. And then if you go back to manage keynote, you see that it shows you how many keynotes have been used of this type. And you can click on this find and it will list every single one of them for you. And if you click on this, it'll take you to that keynote that's placed inside your project. So it's a very, very powerful keynote manager. One of the nicest things about this, I think, is that it's fully backward compatible. So if I want to go into view and sort of like, actually annotate and go to place a keynote, element keynote or something like that, and I want to do this, see when it opens, Revit actually sees all these keynotes as well. You don't really have to use the keynote manager if you want to, if you start using pyRevit's keynote manager. The text file, if you open it, for people that are kind of used to editing this, it follows the exact same format. It uses comment lines to write some information for pyRevit to be able to handle this text file. So if you file this project and after 5 years open it without having pyRevit, you still have access to all your keynotes. It's the same file. And if you store this file on a project that is in BIM 360, let me open one if I can. Right here. See, I think I do have one that has, maybe I don't on this one. Anyway, if you have a project that is open in sort of like placed on BIM 360, and you do have your Autodesk sort of like, what's the new name of it? Autodesk Docs? Autodesk Desktop Connector installed on your machine. And this is synchronizing all these projects, all that kind of stuff on your machine. See, like I have the keynote text file right here. If I open that project, and open the keynote manager recognizes that you're managing keynotes with BIM 360. It gives you the same exact interface. When you open the keynote manager, it locks the file on the BIM 360 server so nobody else can make changes to it. You get to place all your keynotes. When it closes it, it releases that sort of like lock on the BIM 360 as well. And you get to place different types of keynotes in here.
I feel like this is a huge game changer.
Yeah, so it's a pretty good, handy
and a great interface.
Yeah, and it also has a lot of filters in it. There's a lot of like little gems in there that I keep adding because people want it. Like for example, if I want to go in this view, let's say it's a bathroom enlarged view, and you have a lot of standard tags and notes that you put on all these views. When I go on this view, I can just say, show me, filter every keynote that is on this current view only. So, and it stays like this. It remembers its location and all that kind of stuff. So if I place it here, go back to my view, open it again, it uses the same filter, same set of keynotes. So you kind of can use it as a checklist for the items that you want on your site. And you can search for, I don't know, like CSI format keynotes. You can actually check whether your keynotes follow the right format, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty powerful search mechanism right here in pyRevit keynotes. It does automatic conversion of your existing keynote text files if you already have one. So that works as well. How much more time do I have, Dana? Is it pretty good?
Looks like you have a few more minutes, but we are racking up a few questions. You want me to list a few of those for you?
Yeah, sure. Let me just finish with showing this. There's
Perfect.
a panel at the end that's called project that gives you a lot of like project management kind of tools. So let's say you have a Revit model, they don't know which version it is. There's a get Revit info in here, and you can go grab that Revit model, double click on it, and it will print. Oops, this one doesn't work. Bad example. Anyway, not gonna do it again. Live presentations. On some of the most of the Revit models, it'll show you what Revit version, exact Revit version, where it was originally saved, all that kind of stuff in there. There's a kind of pyRevit comes with a set of pre-flight checks that pyRevit contributors are adding, like David and Jean-Marc and sort of like other people are adding standard model checkers. So there's like a model quality checker, and it has a lot of information about what it checks, Revit leaks warnings, reference plans lister, that kind of stuff, that you get to just run this pre-flight check and run that check on your model, and it gives you a report. And you can add these kind of stuff checks to pyRevit by yourself too. They're pretty easy to add. And then like there's a lot of wipe tools at the end of this that you can, let's say you want to send your model to somebody else, you don't want to include any of the sheets or materials, all that kind of stuff. There's a pretty big model cleaner that you can just grab anything that you want to clean, and it will clean and call purge at the end to get your model cleaned up. And there's a whole lot of stuff in here too, like there for like Revit users. Tools. What is it?
I love clean Revit models.
Yeah, these are like there's a lot of wipe tools in here that you can use to clean stuff, like
empty elevation tags that remain in your model. Cautionarily, that
yeah, be very careful.
It's sometimes dangerous. A few of our comments, a few of our questions have been tied to the safety related to every user having pyRevit installed because of how powerful some of these tools can be.
Okay, so it's a great question. One of the things about pyRevit is that all these tools that you see, they're very accessible to you. So if I hold Alt and click on a tool, it'll take me to the directory that has that tool. And if you look at the directory, it says overkill.push button. So this overkill, it's a bundle. That's why we call these a bundle.
And that was Alt press button.
Alt press button. It takes you to the bundle. And if you go back up, you can see there's a definition for the stack. There's a definition for a panel. There's a definition for the pyRevit tab. So if you don't want all these tools, you can grab as much as you want from pyRevit, create your own extension, and distribute the tools that you want to your Revit users. You can customize this panel using the same sort of like format in your extension. All of this is included in the pyRevit source, but you don't have to use the exact layout of pyRevit. You can customize your pyRevit distribution and sort of like distribute it using that way. And there's a lot of information on this page for if you go to the pyRevit wiki and make sure you read the pyRevit for Teams section. And it has a lot of information about distribution model, deployment, how you use the CLI, that kind of stuff to get pyRevit installed, whatnot, things like that.
Love that. Love that. You want a few other questions thrown at you?
Yeah.
So deploys and updates. Do you need to uninstall when there's a new version of pyRevit, or does that take care of the uninstalls during the install process?
Well, the installer would take care of uninstalling, and it actually updates the existing one and sort of like figures out.
Because you're amazing, and of course, why wouldn't it?
It's the installing pyRevit. Installing software in Windows is always a pain. So it's one of those things. Like every once in a while, the installer doesn't work correctly, all that kind of stuff. The only thing that's about the installer that you might need to know is that the installer, when it runs as a elevated user, works differently than when it runs as a normal user. So if you wanted to get installed in program data for your system, basically for your system setups as a system user, it by default installs to program data and puts the configuration in there instead of user folders.
Now, with that, and with what you were speaking with previous and kind of the customization and how you can get to some of the source folders and things like that, do you have resources tied to, how we can do an enterprise deployment with custom extensions?
Absolutely. All this page that I gave you, pyRevit for Teams, is exactly that. pyRevit comes with when you install pyRevit, it gives you a command line interface tool. So you can, on your command line in your PowerShell or any other shell in Windows, you can just say pyRevit, and that's the command that you have, and a lot of management commands that it has. So instead of, I decided a while ago, instead of creating a very, very advanced installer, I'd rather put the effort in creating a command line application that you could use to install and deploy pyRevit in any way you want across your organization. So like pyRevit extend the command can install extensions for you. pyRevit clone command can clone any version of pyRevit that you want, even from your own servers. And all this stuff is described in that document that I showed you. And it has a lot of utilities too. Like if I want to say what Revits are installed on this machine, I can ask pyRevit to check that for me. And it gives me the exact versions of those Revits. And if I want to say, like if somebody reports an error to me, the first thing that I ask from them is to open the command line, type pyRevit env, and it would do a full environment report for me from the Revits that are installed, the pyRevit clones, which one are them attached to different Revits, which extensions are installed, all that kind of stuff right here, and I get to see all of that. So it's a pretty powerful CLI tool, and that's what this article mostly talks about, that, hey, like there's this tool, if you want to deploy pyRevit, just deploy the CLI tool, and using these methods and whatnot, and then to clone pyRevit, you can just run these commands. To attach pyRevit, you can just run these commands. To install your extensions, you can run these commands, that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ehsan. Please, all the participants, please keep posting to the mural. I just posted in the chat for those of you who may have joined a little bit late or who are not in the mural yet. A lot of activity going on in there, so please join us in there. And if you have any questions for Ehsan, please continue to add those. So thank you so much, Ehsan. That was really, really cool.
Okay.
And I am so excited about some of those new tools. The Keynote Manager is definitely a game changer.
Yeah, I've been working for a couple of companies to get this sort of like figured out and remove the bugs and whatnot, and they seem to be pretty happy. It's been a while that I haven't heard from anybody, so I'm assuming that they're using it without. That's
good news, right? No news.
Yeah, that's good news. Yeah, no news is good news.
Awesome. Well, our next presenter, as I mentioned, Jason Kunkel, he's coming from CAD Microsystems, going to present on how to create a Revit add-in and why we create Revit add-ins, right?
Yes. Well, yes. That's
where are you calling from today, Jason?
I'm in Northern Virginia. Made a shift from Richmond. We are up here now in Alexandria and need to finish decorating my office, but that's for another day. So
there you go. There you go.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Tough presentation to follow, frankly. But we'll do what we can.
You're gonna show all of the people the work that Ehsan does, the hard effort that he puts into making pyRevit so beautiful and sleek.
Unfortunately. Yes. So no, I knew it'd be tough to follow. I've just got a PowerPoint to kind of walk through to collect my ideas here, but I am not above trying to crack into Gen X nostalgia here for my presentation. So I wanted to, all right, we're good? See the screen?
We see it.
All right, so walking through how an idea becomes that. We've got a few minutes left. I'm going through there. So for us, I work for CAD Microsystems. We do some of our own internal application development. On top of that, we get contracted by firms and contractors and engineers and architects to do application development for them. In addition, as was kind of hinted at the beginning of the presentation, we do development directly for Autodesk as well. So those are kind of our three big buckets of where we do our development for. I started out doing real kind of minor development back at a firm I was with. I think like a lot of folks who are in this role, in this position, they found things that they wanted to improve and they started Googling and reading. My world kind of ended there. You know, when I work with our development team, when I see things like Ehsan put together, I really can't call myself a developer, but I got to the point where I can have those conversations and I can help work on a lot of development teams to kind of anticipate issues, work through problems, and design workflows and tools. So in these 3 buckets, really, in terms of where our ideas come from, the first one here is our consultants are working, something is frustrating them, something's making them angry. Let's see if we can fix it. For most of the firms we work for, it's usually a monotonous and tedious workflow that they're tired of repeating again and again. And then when we're doing our work for Autodesk, there's a whole litany of different influences there. We have different groups we work for, different departments, and of course they have different customers and different needs and market shares and all sorts of things. But once we get our idea, once there is the impetus, this is kind of the stages we go through. They're not really project phases. There's nothing we're going to put in a proposal, but we go through planning, we get some alignment, coding, of course, and then testing. So this gets us from kind of our just general idea down to a shareable, deployable, installable add-in for Revit, AutoCAD, Civil 3D, wherever we're going there. On the planning end. So this is where we have the idea, we start sitting down, we try to figure out, one, can Revit do what we want it to do? So every year the API evolves inside of Revit, new things are added, some things are changed. A couple of years ago, we started talking about ceilings and anybody who wanted to develop in Revit got angry. Recently they changed that, we can now deal with ceilings. But we are limited by what Autodesk exposes through the API. So that might be a full stop right there immediately, whether or not it can actually be done. We do some testing, do some little prototypes. Are we really 100% positive that it can do that thing? Because even though it may say it can do that thing, it may not work exactly like we think that we want that thing to happen. There's certainly clarification. We've got discussion with the stakeholders to figuring out if the route we're going down is the route they wanted to go down. And then, as former architects and designers, the fun part is starting to lay out UI. This is all done in kind of this nascent, let's have a lot of charrettes, let's have a lot of conversation, planning stage. It certainly is not disordered or disorderly. It all kind of gets all cycled together and we can do some research, we can have some phone calls, we can put some UI together, do some testing, and it all kind of bundles up together. Some of the tools we want to use, or we are using, and this is not an endorsement necessarily, it's just what we've been using and it works for us. Smart Draw is out there as a great kind of lane control workflow documentation. There's an application called Mock Plus that we use for our UI layouts. It's got a nice, easy-ish interface. No coding is necessary, easy to share with people to kind of test out. And of course, there's just good old Photoshop that we like to throw things in as well, because it's just easy to move graphics around. So once we've kind of tackled things on the planning end, we end up with a document. It is not really a book. It is not this large. We don't print it. But this is where we need to get alignment. So the document we develop is what we call an SRS, a software requirement specification. Depending on the scale of our projects, it may not actually be as formal as that. It might simply be an email conversation. But we want something documented between our team, the stakeholders, and anybody else who's going to be involved to make sure that we have alignment and agreement on the functionality, on the general design, on the workflows, and the final form. Final form meaning, are we giving them an EXE? Are we giving them MSI? Is it a web-hosted application? But all of this is done before we start coding at all. This is getting everything in line. This is getting our scope defined, and this is giving us our milestones to make sure we are hitting the right things. A lot of what I'm saying is probably common sense. You're like, well, yeah, we should absolutely do that. Some of these things were kind of trial by error as we were going through here. You kind of learn, you adjust, you tweak, and this is the process that we've gotten to that seems to hit the mark well for the scale of development that we need to do. So coding, then we start coding. Like I mentioned, for me, that was Google and copy pasting. So luckily we have a lot better coders out there. Questions inside of Revit. What versions are we supporting? Are we expecting upgrades? A lot of question lately has been, is it going on Forge? Are we expanding this? Do we need to connect to other APIs or other services that are feeding into this? Meaning, is it not truly exclusively a Revit only application? And then a lot of times there's supporting content, which we might not have thought about, but we got to make sure we staff up and get ready to kind of create that. Might be RFA files, might be external databases, might just be random text files that need to be filled up. So when the coding happens, every so often, Revit's got its macro editor. If it's a really, really small application, it's a really nice place just to kind of hop in, test, launch, tweak, go from there. But most of our work is done inside of Visual Studio. And then in terms of storage, we're using DevOps. And for our Autodesk projects, we're using Autodesk private GitHub as well. Visual Studio, I don't know if folks have used it, but it's broken down to this concept of solutions and projects. And the big question around that kind of goes back to version. Visual Studio has a great facility to allow you to kind of customize your projects, and there's conditional formatting, and that allows us to kind of build the add-ins for the different versions of Revit. That's one of the challenges in making an add-in. We're not making just like a single executable file that you launch and run. We're making one plugin that needs to run in 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023 when that comes out. And again, that API is not what we control. We have to adhere to it, and we have to make sure that our code can work properly in there. Visual Studio also has some really nice debugging in there, some really cool stuff you can do. So it makes it a little easy to go in and find the issues that you have, but you still have to get your code, build your DLL, open Revit, have that launch your add-in, find the breaking point, close Revit, go back to Visual Studio, fix it, recompile, open Revit, run it again. So you're always getting in and out of Revit to kind of build and test some of these larger applications.
One of the questions we have actually probably is why we have to do a lot of debugging and testing is, does the Revit API ever change between updates?
I think there have been some minor tweaks. I'm assuming we're talking like within the 0.1, 0.2s. There have been some real basic minor ones, but the major ones are for those year version updates. For example, I think it was 2020, there was a significant change to how it handled naming of units. And we had to kind of rewrite everything that we had that handled units, inches or square footage or anything like that. Yeah, most of the time you're pretty safe within the same year. Just a quick note in terms of storage, we do use Git solutions. It's either DevOps or, like I mentioned, Autodesk has their own. This was its own new nerd language to learn, but it facilitates backups, allows you to do some history. Ideally, Git solutions were designed for large teams. We have teams with multiple people, but it's not like a team of 50 developers or 20 developers. It's a handful of developers on every project. So the sharing of code is not that essential, but it is there if you need to use it. So coding is done. We go into testing, and honestly, we've been testing all along. We've been doing little tests here and there, but this is kind of pencils down. We've got some testing, and what we're looking for is, of course, does it work? Does it do what we wanted it to do within that definition of the scope or definition of the application? And as testing is going on, we're always looking for ways that can be improved, but obviously within the scope and the scale of the original project. We don't want to double the effort just because we found one new exciting way to do it. For us, we do our internal testing. These are all applications based on kind of this core Revit or AutoCAD or Civil 3D software that our consultants just know, and they know the software. So they're our first group that we always throw this to. They also like to find problems with things, so they love doing that and throwing it back out there. But once our internal testing is done, we have some sort of beta. So if that's with a specific customer, they've got a team we've been interacting with, we give it to them, we give them a little training. They take it for a week, 2 weeks, depending on the scale of the project, and then report back to us. We've actually very recently with Autodesk just had our first kind of real official Autodesk closed beta program. And that was a very interesting educational experience to kind of learn how to manage that and facilitate that and communicate with those teams there. Then you've got an add-in, and honestly, you've had an add-in for a while because you guys got to use it, but you've got a real live grown-up add-in that you can share and deploy and install and start using. So beyond the journey, quick grab bag. if you kind of look at software development, you might have seen things like scrums or agile or waterfall developments. These are project management techniques and how to kind of facilitate those development teams. We frankly have never needed to kind of go down that road. Again, it's about the scale, it's about the size. These are great for large development teams. We frankly just don't have teams that are that big that need something this formalized. We've been needing to adapt to different platforms. We've learned a lot about Amazon Web Services over the last year and a half. A lot of Forge work, a lot of design automation work is going to require that. This is a personal journey thing for me. I'm not telling everybody else they need to do this, but I certainly know as a user years and years ago, it was very easy to get mad at the professionally created software. And why doesn't it do this? Why doesn't it do this? I don't want to use the word that coding is hard, because there are things in this world that are hard, but it is complicated. And so I certainly have a little more sympathy for the big developers and understanding why that new feature isn't out exactly the second that I may want it out. Obviously, the more you do it, the easier it gets, especially in the research area. Just kind of know what it can and can't do. And then one thing we focus on, because frankly, we like to get in there, we like to build it, and we like to kind of let it go, is the documentation and the training around. That's both the internal documentation and the coding, and then also the ability to easily share how it works with who needs to use it. And the last piece is deployment. How is it getting deployed? Depending on who we're making it for, very different ways to deploy it. But that is always something that should be defined ideally in the SRS initially. But this needs kind of its own level of testing and tweaking once even the add-in is done. We've had many times when we get the add-in done, we get an MSI. The MSI does something really weird, and we kind of go back to the drawing board when we build the MSI. So there's my cute little guys. Questions on what I kind of crammed through there?
Those are adorable. I'll say that your little sketches in your presentation are adorable, all of them. But there is a question, and I'm going to pop back to the mural here. Do you have a common threshold for minimally viable products? How do you know when to go to beta?
I mean, we don't go to beta until we have an application. For us, in terms of those three groups, if somebody comes to us and says, "Can you build this?" It's viable. We're going to look into building it. For our own tools, kind of our CAD branded tools, they're definitely more on the kind of the smaller side, right? Because there's a scale, there's a resource necessary there, and honestly, there's no magic bullet that we point to. It's just kind of, hey, I bet we could get this done in X hours. Does this feel good? Yeah, let's go ahead and do it. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jason. That was super enlightening. Thanks. I really appreciate that. I will say thank you all for those of you who participated today in the mural. As you can see, it was very successful. Our participant who wins the $25 gift card, congratulations to, hopefully I do not butcher your name, Nikhail Ranga. So congratulations. Someone from CAD Microsystems should be contacting you to give you that gift card. And lastly, before we jump off, in perfect timing, I went ahead and added an image over here at the survey. You double click on that guy, it'll take you to the survey. Making it super easy over here. So make sure you fill that out. Thank you so much for all of those wonderful future topic ideas. We are definitely going to take that into consideration as we plan the next few months of topics. So thank you all. I'll stay on for those of you who may want to ask some questions or what have you. In a few minutes, we're going to kick everybody off. So thank you for joining us today. Ehsan and Jason, if you could stay on, if you have a moment, that would be appreciated.